Hey everyone, it's Stefana, your product manager for CA Service Virtualization. Today we have an update to the features that we've been working on for access control. You heard from Wendell Beckwith last time. He went through some of the enhancements we were making, and today he's going to give us a great review of those enhancements, what's in the product today, and we may talk about a little bit what will happen in the future with those features. He's going to demo to you some of the intricate parts of editing the property files and so on so that you can integrate properly with your Ldap. All right, Wendell, off to you.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. All right. With our new authentication abilities, it's primarily controlled by two new files, and I'll kind of briefly go through them right here, and then I'll show how manipulating the attributes, what they actually do. First off is we have this file called Authentication Providers, and inside of it there's a couple, well actually several, that are required, like you must give the name and the type name is just for labeling purposes that will eventually surface in the UI. But the type tells us what kind of authentication provider you're actually configuring, whether it's Ldap, Active Directory, embedded database to our dev test database, or custom if you're creating your own authentication and you want to plug into our API. So let me just jump down to some configured ones, and it'll be actually easier to kind of see. So just using like CA Active Directory, I have another Ldap working. So I've actually configured 3 authentication providers actually right here. And there's various things we can do because of various customer requirements. Like some people want to do everything in Ldap. They want nothing really happening in the dev test product, while there are others who have the reverse. They actually want to authenticate only from Ldap, but they want to manage all the users' permissions and so forth actually from the dev test console, because it may be easier dealing with that than having to go through their information group to get new users added to Ldap and so forth. Other cases that have come up is people want to prevent what we have, what's known as reject unmapped users. So if a user is not in the Ldap group, then you don't want them to be able to log in, for example. And you can also enable and disable these guys, so you don't have to like delete the element or whatever for whatever reason. A certain authentication provider might be down for temporarily, and so you can come in here and you can just change this from enabled true to false, and then it'll be taken out of the queue of being active, and we won't actually try and hit that, taking up time. The other file that's actually used, this comes when we're actually doing Ldap mappings, and we have this notion of mapping a role to 1 or more, actually 0 or more Ldap groups. So right here you can see that I have a mapping for SV power role in the product, and it's actually going to 1 Ldap group right here, the distinguished name of a group. First off, we're just going to start logging into our console app. And looking at the user roles, display users. So we see these are all the users that are actually in the system right now. So I want to now come here to Workstation, and we're going to log in with a new user. And now we're logged in as admin 2, which is actually in this, provided by this Ldap system running on one of our local machines here. And this user, oops, I switched too fast. This user has a default role of test power, so that's how we actually configured it. So when we come into Workstation and we look at the permissions for this person, we see that they actually got the test power role that they were actually assigned. This is because this authentication provider is not being mapped to Ldap groups. So what happens is that if you do that and we don't find any Ldap groups that are mapped to you, we then are keyed off of 2 things. One if reject unmap users equals false, then that means we'll go to the next part, which is assigning you whatever the default role is. So if I come here and switch this to true, and this file is live. Actually, both these files are actively monitored, so you can make a change and it'll automatically get picked up. You don't have to restart the system for that to happen. So now I come here and I try and log in again, the same user. And now it tells me there's authentication failed for this user because of that. All right. Next up, we can actually, let me put this back. Log in with a different user. This is going to an Active Directory system. And looking at the permissions for this person, we see that the role assigned to this user is SV Power, even though the default role was super user. This is because this user is actually sitting in this Ldap group. So if this group had been in multiple places, try to put this under here, then they will actually end up getting both of these roles. So Test Administrator and SV Power would have been assigned to this user if I was to go and log in again. Let's see. So this is, and when we come back over here and we refresh, we see that we do not have any new users actually added into the dev test database. All this being managed dynamically. And like I said, some users actually want that, everything being managed externally to the system, while some users actually want the opposite. So to configure that, we would come in here and we would turn on what's known as Authenticate Only, being true, auto add users, and we need to reject them. So there. Now, so this also applies at the portal level, so we can switch over. At this point, kind of demonstrating most of the capabilities that we added. There have been a few, and most of this is actually already in 8.4. There's been a few refinement of error messages that are actually happening in 8.5. Like I said, the order in which these guys, you typically should put the order in which where like most of your users are going to be found. So right now we're hitting like the CA Active Directory, then a secondary Ldap, then finally what we've configured is what we call legacy, which we previously had older authentication API that somebody may have implemented, and we consider that to be legacy. And the legacy authentication providers right now configured to talk to our embedded database and provide a role of guest if that actually happens. So
Wendell, by default, when the folks use this out of the box, what is going to be in this Authentication Providers XML file? Will they have that legacy information, or will they have to know to put it in?
Out of the box, neither one of these files actually exists. Well, let me clarify. Applications. What actually happens is out of the box, just like we do with our other files that we want users to tailor and so forth, we provide an underscore authentication providers.xml and underscore Ldap mappings. And these guys start you with your templates on, and they have examples right here of kind of what you want to do, example authentication providers or how that. So all a user does is they copy this file to, without the underscore leading, to be authentication-providers.xml or Ldap-mappings.xml, and then they can tailor it to however they want. Now, with these files not being there, what actually happens is by default, so that we can maintain backward compatibility, we go ahead and internally create a legacy authentication provider. But the minute you start actually, if you copy this file and you don't put a legacy authentication provider and you only put Ldap, then that's only the providers you'll get, and you have total control over that. There's one other thing that, now that I think about it. Any passwords that I actually put in this file are automatically encrypted. So if I was to take this and replace this with and save it, it will eventually get encrypted once the software detects that there's actually been a change to the file. There it is.
Perfect. That's great. I think that could be a vulnerability if we had allowed that in plain text, but thank you for sharing that. Thank you. I appreciate the time today. Bye-bye.
Thanks.